Welcome to Circular Firing Squad. I'm Marty Gensius, a counseling faculty at Kent State University and host for Circular Firing Squad. We've got 3 members, 6 questions. We're going to double up on questions this time. The rounds go pretty fast when we do that. And 3 answers for each question, because we're not going to answer the question twice. Each squad member generates a question that we all have to answer, ranging from the pastoral to the pathetic. And tonight, let's see who's with us.
Hi, everybody. Elliott Ingersoll from Cleveland State University and host of Apply Topically.
Good evening, everybody. My name is Mitch Conrad. I am a third-year clinical mental health counseling student at Cleveland State University and practicing counselor trainee at Baldwin Wallace University.
And Elliott, you have the first question.
Okay. If your program had an elf on the shelf, who would it watch most closely and why?
Mitch, that's you.
I feel like this is just like a can of worms question, but part of me wants to. Here's where I'll go with it. I imagine the elf on the shelf in our program probably doesn't need to watch anyone in our program or in our department. In terms of like if I'm sort of remembering elf on the shelf, because like we didn't have these growing up when I was a kid, and so I've always like heard of it and like other people's experiences. I think if I'm understanding the concept, it's the idea of like the elf is sort of like watching you, right, and seeing if you're like bad or good.
That's it.
Yeah. And so like, yeah, definitely like, I would say that the elf on the shelf in our program is probably looking up at other, college administrators and seeing about like if they've been bad or good this year, right, and how they've been treating people. I sort of think that a lot of colleges are going through this, especially working at now multiple colleges and hearing from other people who are at other colleges too. It's like, how have people been treated, and what have people sort of like, I always come back to the idea of like, what do people deserve or not, and I understand there's been lots of budget cuts at colleges, but the stories of like how I've heard that other people have been treated, I'm not a believer in karma. I think that people kind of like create their own karma, I suppose. And this is the one thing that I do wonder about is like, I imagine there's a lot of guilt for like how I imagine there could be a lot of guilt for how, some people at, colleges sort of across the country, who have had these like budget cuts and who have just like let people go. And I think treated people overwhelmingly poorly. I'm happy to just call that what it is. Just stories of people, right, like being given like 2 weeks notice in the middle of the semester, people, students who have talked about like, hey, like my undergrad classes are like canceled and like I'm like 2 or 3 years into my minor and the classes might not be offered anymore, and so I might not like be able to complete my minor. This stuff isn't stuff that just affects like, our graduate program, but is stuff that affects like programs across campuses and students across campus too. Because if it's affecting a teacher, if it's affecting a professor, it's going to affect students. And so I do wonder if our elf on the shelf, if we have one, which I have, I can neither confirm nor deny that I've seen an elf hanging around our department. But I do wonder how it's been viewing really what's happened at like not just our college, but a lot of colleges about like how people have been treated, because I constantly hear stories about how people have been mistreated, and it makes me feel pretty upset. So kind of a serious answer to start off the night, but yeah, that's where I'm at on it.
You stole my answer, Mitch. I feel good about all the people in my faculty and in my program. They're all working very hard. We're all trying to navigate our way through difficult times in higher education, with cutbacks, with reduction of enrollment. the kinds of things that a bloated system doesn't deal well with. And at the same time, a bloated administration doesn't deal well with. So I think the elf on the shelf is looking at the provost's office. Um, we are going through a situation right now where we have a whole bunch of options that are being presented to us about college restructuring, university restructuring. And, we had to choose our favorites and we had to give lots of feedback. And it was at least a meeting a week for the last 6 weeks trying to decide on which version of a university do we want to look at. So we all filed the information in, and they said, don't worry, we're going to take your information in consideration and we'll come back with a solution based on everybody's input. So it's the presence of looking like we're giving input. It's the sense that we have some agency in the process. And then they turn around and they come back with two different designs that were nothing like any of the 5 designs we looked at. And essentially, this is how we can cut back on this number of administrators, and this is how we can cut back on this number of administrators, and this is the makeup. So now we'd like you to spend another 2 weeks, even less than that, making decisions and giving us feedback on which version that you really like. And it kind of feels like kabuki theater. I'm half tempted to give just absolutely crazy feedback just for my own self-entertainment. It's obvious. Rip the bandage off, make a decision, let's get to the issue and get it done. Don't give us this false sense of engagement or participation. So the elf is probably looking at upper administration.
Well, these are both surprising and welcome answers. I think my understanding of higher ed admin, the reorg, you save the most money by breaking unhealthy or fiscally unwise norms. And we had a pretty good series of chairs in our department, but I would hear cases where someone was running a class with 3 people in it, and it's like, why, so anyway, I can see it from both perspectives. But if I'm just going to answer the question honestly, the elf on the shelf in the department, it would definitely be looking at me. And I know that because Carl, my friend here of 50 some years, he was our elf on the shelf for a couple of years. He wanted to take a year off this year. So I have some inside information.
Well, Mitch, you've got the next question.
All right. Let's go with sort of a 2-parter. I'm not sure if I'm even allowed to do this. What's your least favorite thing and favorite thing about winter?
Of course, you're allowed to do this. This one, when I saw it, I was like, I think this is kind of easy. I really like the solitude of winter. There's something about needing to go through all of the seasons, including this very quiet, frozen renewal that we have in the Northeast, that is important for me, sort of from my own sense of cycles. So yeah, I like the white snow. I like the solitude. I like it's too yucky. Let's just stay inside today and do whatever we're going to do. Here's what I don't like. The slush that is kind of muddy, dark, and the salt, because that becomes permeated through kind of everything and around everything that we do. So that's my like and not like. I like the solitude of winter, hate the kind of messy stuff that comes with it.
I'm right there on the similar page with you, Marty. Yeah, I love that the world shuts the heck up for a while and people aren't running in and outside and dogs aren't barking as much. And I like snow. I like cold. Yeah, we'd never want to move in a place where there wasn't at least a semblance of winter. I do love all that. The worst thing for me is driving in Cleveland, which they have not yet caught up with some of the 21st century technologies. I wrote to two mayors. I said, there's this really crazy thing. You get this huge truck and you put a curved piece of metal on the front. You have to attach it to the truck, but it goes on the front of the truck. It goes close to the ground too. And then you hit the gas and you get the snow out the way. It's brilliant technology. I have not heard back from either mayor, so I suspect that will continue to be a bane for me this year.
Yeah, totally agree with those least favorite things. I think for me, I've had to try and try and see the good in winter if that's a possibility for me. But I feel like I have been doing a better job of it this year specifically. My least favorite thing is definitely just like straight up the cold. I'm not like I like to sit at a nice balmy like if I can. I think I've mentioned this on the pod before. Like I love like okay like sitting at like 76, 77, 78. That's great. Like indoors, outdoors, it's all the same temperature to me. It's like I like being a little warm. Body kind of runs a little cold. So it feels like it runs a little cold sometimes. Especially coming back from living in Venice, Florida, it was like all of a sudden like 60 degrees is like cold weather, and it took me a while to get to the point where like I can be outdoors recently in like 20 to 30 degree weather and it'd be like okay this is fine. Like I remember coming back, I'm like I can't do this. I'm not sure if this is like how do humans live in 30 degree weather. I'm not sure how this actually happens. The favorite thing for me is that I've run into a lot of people lately who actually like really enjoy winter, and so I get to hear their perspective about like why they actually enjoy winter. A lot of people I found out really love snow, and that's I guess that has made me think like, do I actually like dislike snow or do I just like the cold? Like if it was snowing in July, would I actually have an issue with it? I hear Marty what you said about kind of like how it can sometimes like get to that like disgusting like icky like phase where it's like we've sort of pushed it all away and it's sort of like as soon as the snow starts turning like grayish blue, it's like okay, maybe we could get rid of that. But I think listening to other people's perspectives on it also makes me feel a little bit better about like climate change when it's snowing. Just like okay, like we're not still like in an oven here on this planet, and we're maybe getting a little it'd be nice to like chill down a little bit, and not be so selfish with wanting it to be hot. Is kind of what I've decided.
Elliot, you spoke about the dogs being quiet, and I that really struck me because there is a point in the summer, it's that bewitching hour around 5 o'clock where my dog will be barking at what we think is nothing, but if I stick my head out the window, I can hear a dog a block away barking that our dog is responding to, and they're responding to other dogs, and it turns into this symphony that goes on for a long period of time, and there's nothing you can do to stop it. Well, there are less dogs outside now in the weather, so it's quieter. And I live at the end of a cul-de-sac, and I have a window just to the left of me that looks out onto the cul-de-sac. And there's not a lot of cars that come down in the cul-de-sac, but I can raise that window shade up and look out there and see all the white down the street. And it's very quiet and reflective, and I really like that aspect of it. So I've got the next question, and the question is: with semester break for all of us coming, and the holiday season, you have these weeks off where you can do all sorts of time suck stuff, things that you wind up getting surprised, being pulled into doing something that you don't get to do during the usual time of work. So, my question is for you, what is that? What time sucks do you do or have you done that you've kind of fallen into?
Listeners of the show might recall that I was going to try to go back to playing double bass, and um, the hands are working pretty good, so it's going really well. But then the first times was I like, oh, I got to get this bass set up again. The action could be a lot better. So I took the bass to the luthier. Now I'm waiting for the estimate. But yeah, double bass, it's like a bad relationship. It just takes constant attention. So that'll be a big part of my break.
Ooh, so I'm anticipating some time sucks happening. I would say that right now I'm not really I don't feel like my time is quite being sucked away. I feel overall pretty balanced. Towards the end of the semester, just, caught up on, I think one of my like goals inside of internship was like making sure that I'm always caught up on all of my stuff. And so I haven't really had like time sucks currently, but oh boy, like I see some time sucks coming. I think one of the things that I've been thinking in my life is like, oh gosh, I'm like doing internship, I'm doing college, I'm doing a job, and it's like, where's the time for enjoyment? Where's the time for fun? And I think that's like what I anticipate is going to be happening over break. I used to be somebody who was into video games a lot. And video games used to, I don't want to say like rule my life, but they were a major part of like I would play video games every day. And now that I have an opportunity to not do anything for approximately like 3 weeks here, I'm going on one vacation to Nebraska to visit family. But now that I have no time, or rather I have all the time in the world to do whatever I want, I'm sitting and I'm like, yeah, I remember like really loving and enjoying and playing like video games and board games, whether it be alone or with friends. Obviously board games more with friends, but that's something that I've been thinking about is like, oh gosh, I can get into that stuff and it can completely suck the time out of my day where I'm ending up playing a video game for something like, 10 hours, and so I don't think that, I don't want to get back into that as a routine. That's a bit too much for me, but I can imagine getting back into it, like upcoming here over the break. Got some games that I've been interested in playing for a while, and they're sort of on the docket for. I would say they are on the docket for me moving into break.
There are a lot of places where during the semester I hear people talk about doing things like binge watching. I don't have any time during the semester to binge watch. I barely get shows in that I want to see, let alone shows that I'd like, I dream about seeing. So I wind up spending some time, and when I mean binge watch, I don't mean I'm watching 7 shows a day or anything like that. If I get 3 in, I consider that 3 episodes in, I consider that a binge watch. So in the past, it's been things like my goal is to get through the winter break seeing every episode of PBS Perot, and watching that. And I might get a couple episodes in a day. I've done Columbo one season, one break. I'm probably going to work on Silo or Shrinking, maybe during this break. But that seems to be the time suck thing that I fall into when it comes to having a good semester break. I wind up getting to binge watch, if you call it that. Get to binge watch some shows that just I, for some reason, start and then get sucked into for a period of time. Elliott, you've got the next question.
Okay. If you were going to create a unique horror film using a Christmas setting, what would you create?
So, as someone who does not at all like horror movies, I guess my creativity, maybe it's because my mind can get kind of like wild with, what's going on. So this is what I came up for this question. I tried to put some intentional thought into it. I like movie titles for like it feels like the scarier the movie title, the more like normal it is. And so instead of like a setting, I decided to go with a song here, which is Carol of the Bells. So that would be the title of the movie. And the tagline would be Every Bell Tolls for Another Soul. And how this movie works is it kind of came to me in a way of like I can't remember if it was like The Outsiders or something like that, but it was people who like came to somebody's house. But it would be this group of carolers who would come to someone's house and sing to them, right? And if you're a family, maybe you've got like, two people there and you've got like a bunch of carolers who come to the house. Maybe it's like 5 or 6 people. Well, you could be easily overwhelmed. And so now I'm thinking, well, I'm not opening my door for carolers this season. I'm not like manifesting this stuff. Like this is not happening to me. So if you're a caroler coming in my door, you're not getting in. You're not, it's like, thank you very much for your time. And also, I thought about this movie. It's not happening for me. But I do worry about that. I do worry, and now I'm like, has that ever happened? Has someone opened the door for like a group of carolers and it turned into like a horror movie for them? Because it's like you never know. There's not a 0% chance that something like that couldn't happen, where like a bunch of people or like a group of 5 people are walking around and it's like, yeah, why don't we like ransack this house here, and just go in and pretend to be carolers. They might even be really good. Maybe they're even like in a church choir or something like that, and they just decided to like cause a ruckus and like a neighborhood development. Like I don't know, but I'm even sitting here getting a little. This is how much I dislike horror movies, because I feel like even if this is something that someone is probably listening out there and just be like, yeah, this is not scary at all, and I'm sitting there and I'm like, yeah, I'm terrified just coming up with my own imaginary horror movie. So that's what I would do. Just call it Carol of the Bells, out in theaters December 26th, right after Christmas. Every bell tolls for another soul.
I got to tell you, Mitch, that is amazing. I love that. And if you go back to the early wassail traditions, I am sure households were overwhelmed with revelers. That had to have happened. I was Christmas caroling with a group, and the person's house was on fire, and they said, "We can't listen. The house is on fire. Slam the door." I mean, so things happen.
Yeah. Ooh, got the jitters here.
This was the toughest question, I think, of the group for me, in the sense that I had a difficult time coming up with anything. I'm not a big fan of horror, as Mitch is. However, I think I've seen every Santa slasher movie that's out there. And there was one that was just done a couple of years ago that was just incredible. And it wasn't even a slasher movie. It was like bad guys take over a house of a rich person who is not a good person to begin with, and does, some shady stuff in terms of business, and it's a family. So then Santa, the little girl who is good and true calls for Santa to come and join, and hopefully Santa will save them on Christmas Eve. And as it turns out, Santa's a real badass when you go back to his original mythology. He's a badass in this and takes care of all the bad and evil people. That one I enjoyed. There was Silent Night, Deadly Night. So it's something about the genre, but other than that, I don't care for horror movies at all. So I'm really picking low-hanging fruit. People locked in a church or get locked in a church over Christmas services, and there's a serial killer, and you have to figure out who it is. That's all I got, guys. I'm sorry.
Hey, that's pretty good. Those are both great answers. I love them. But given my background with the Anglican Communion and the Episcopal Church, what I would do is I would center it around the Boar's Head and Yule Log Festival. So the first thing would be like Boar's Head Revenge. And then the follow-up would be the Beef Eaters Fight Back. And then the Woodsmen Attack. And then, you got a franchise here, man. So, but it starts with Boar's Head Revenge.
That sounds good.
like that.
Well,
All right.
Mitch, you've got the next question.
All right. We'll go with what required classes and counseling programs, so assuming KCREP, right, accredited stuff, um, might be best changed to something else.
You know, I'm having a I'm having a hard time with all these questions tonight. I don't know why, but this was another one that I had a hard time with trying to come up with a solution. I started to go through our curriculum. I'm like, yeah, they don't need, no, they need that. No, they don't need that. No, they don't need. Students have better assumptions about what they think they don't need. However, faculty, I think, have better assumptions of what they do need. I really think the career course is needed, but it needs to be changed because it focuses too much on theories. It focuses too much on, and I like theories. I'm kind of a theory wonk, but it focuses too much on that kind of historic structure, and it doesn't focus enough on process, and it doesn't focus enough on the issues that modern day people bring in about the work-life balance. And you don't find any materials that necessarily support that. So, what career was one of the first courses they gave me to teach. And the assumption of the chair at that time was, well, you've worked in EAP, so you know about careers. That was my qualifications for teaching a career course. So it's always, so I went back and I told my chair, I said, you will not believe what course they're having me teach. And he said, career. And I said, well, how did you guess that? And he goes, because that's what they give all the first time faculty, because it's a course that nobody wants to or knows how to teach. So I think that the EAP experience that I had actually helped me because we dealt with job loss, we dealt with job transition. Those are the things that clients come in with as part of their spectrum of problems. So I'm having a bad relationship with my family. My wife and I are getting into arguments. I'm having trouble at the job. It's not help me pick a job or help me pick a career. So I wouldn't eliminate it. I would just kind of change it drastically.
Yeah, I'm right there with you, Marty. So I won't repeat what you said, but yeah, I agree that career has got to be drastically changed. And I would say for programs that are still saddled with a non-counseling specific research course, like, oh, heaven forbid, educational research, get rid of it. I got a lot of ideas for people. Instead of that course, go see a movie about a really smart person. That might work. Or we'll give you $20. Go into the local casino, and if you come out with more, you pass. There's all kinds of ways you can test people's facility with numbers. So that's one I'd get rid of.
I'm really looking forward to taking the educational research course next semester based on that answer now. I'll hop on the career bandwagon here because it does seem a bit it does seem a bit specific to me. At least that's how it's always come off, because I can think of other things that people come in with generally, right? Like stuff like relationship concerns, and how many people come in with like relationship concerns, but we don't necessarily have a course that's entirely dedicated to something like that. And career, at least the way that I've experienced it, has been so hyper specific, and it almost feels like that it's almost like focused on like career development for like the self coming in. At least that's kind of been my a bit of my experience in the program and like talking with other students about it. I guess it's kind of the weird thing about like KCREP, right? Is that you've got like 18 courses that are, as far as I understand, right, like about 18 courses that are required, and then like 2 electives. And so those 18 courses are going to be whatever KCREP determines is like the way to run a counseling program. I think the challenge with something like this is that when you have faculty members like relying on their specific strengths, and usually this manifests in terms of like electives, but relying on their specific strengths, I would wonder like what it would look like if it was more like 16 required courses and 4 electives or something like that. And so people could, kind of like rely on their individual strengths and perspectives that they're bringing in, as opposed to focusing on like what KCREP has determined that everybody needs. Because that seems like probably, that seems to me like maybe not the way to go, I guess, where what does it look like instead of a more generalist attitude to provide, because everybody's got this, like any KCREP program is like, okay, like this is generally your accreditation, you have to offer the same types of courses. What does it do to rely on counselor educators' strengths and provide electives and provide more electives for students where, because I assume that counselor educators would prefer to teach their electives than something like career, especially based on your answer, Marty, about, right, like how many people actually want to teach career or not. One of the other things that I was wondering about is sort of like appraisal. Just like generally it seems like we don't use a lot of assessments in this field. I think there's like some way to incorporate that in other classes, but like I know that we have like 2 assessment courses in our program, and I've just never met, I would say that 90% of the counselors who I meet are just like not using assessments. And it seems to be like, I wonder, especially with stuff, I mean, obviously, people, we all know that I'm into like psychedelics, and a class like that is eventually, I imagine that's going to be part of like KCREP eventually. It's just a matter of time. But then we've got stuff like, students talk, I listen to students in the program all the time talk about like, where is, like a trauma course inside of the general, like the general 18 credits, as opposed to like we have a trauma elective, but it's a school elective, and so people don't get like a course on like traumatology. I think about like Marty, some of the stuff that you're passionate about, like technology, right? Like especially like in today's environment and moving forward, how do we have classes on, how do we inform counselors and teach more about like the creative ways that we can use technology, especially as we're moving into a more digital age of counseling. I don't prefer to counsel over Zoom, but the dynamic is different, right? And like allowing students to, especially if they're going to be doing that mostly, like there are some differences, and there are some ways that you can still provide like more active forms of interventions on a digital format, and active forms of interaction with a client on a digital format, as opposed to, right, like just only kind of like sitting and doing the talk therapy component of it. So I think there's a lot of room. I can't imagine that. I imagine that if we're still stuck with the same kind of like 18 general KCREP things in 15 to 20 years, that would really concern me, because it's like, okay, like is the field evolving, or are we still stuck in like what we've been doing for a really long time? I'm not sure when like KCREP standards change, but it's an interesting question to me about like what students are interested in, and also like what faculty are like really passionate about teaching inside of an elective based format. And these students want more access to 2 electives. I've taken, I think, 5 electives or 6 electives at CSU just based on being a graduate assistant, and I've always found those to be some of the most engaging courses where I learn the most.
I'm not a cake. Go ahead.
I just wanted to throw out, listeners may find this interesting, this Project 2025, that's some hoo-ha in the Republican Party. I've been reading it, and they got their eye and a bullseye on higher education accreditation bodies, especially those who appear to be politically left-leaning. So maybe we'll be dealing with something other than KCREP in the near future. I don't know. I'm just saying, I'm not sure I agree with it, but I think everyone should read it.
And let me, I'm not a KCREP apologist, but I'm going to correct something that you said, Mitch. KCREP
Sure,
does
absolutely.
not, KCREP does not define what courses you have to provide. It only says this is the content you have to provide. So, some of your concerns and Elliott's concerns about we should be having counselor educators teaching the research course. We pulled that thing into our program just for that same reason. They don't need a generalized education research course, which is often tilted towards teaching or the College of Education stuff. And we pulled it in for the counseling faculty, and we have counseling faculty teach it now. And we did the same thing with our human development course, because the human development course
Yep.
didn't go the full lifespan. And also, we found it as a place where you could put trauma in. So we redid the curriculum to do that, and that those courses are now taught by faculty. So it's not a course that KCREP dictates its content. Now, I don't disagree with you. They have long been distant about technology, and to the point where it was forgivable early on because there are only nerds like me doing tech. But now they still don't have enough in there about technology, application, AI, things like that, and they say, well, it's covered by the blanket statement about this curriculum. They dictate curriculum, they don't dictate ethics. So, it's a two-pronged fork. It's what ACA says you have to be able to do as a ethical counselor within their code, and also if you're looking at accrediting bodies, what they say needs to be the content that counselors have to have. So
Gotcha.
it's
Thanks for the insight there.
it's a sticky wicket, and their programs, all they have to do is show that content is done and it's evaluated. It doesn't matter what the course title is called. So my call around career was basically, I think, a lot of the content is antiquated and doesn't address what people are doing, and it's not well integrated into the counseling. It's like a separate thing. And it really is. If you sit down with a client, they have relationship issues, they have mental health issues, they have career issues in terms of employment and work that they have to deal with. So why are we wasting a lot of the time in a course like that could be more integrated into the practice of counseling than it actually is, besides giving them an assessment and saying, this is the job that's best suited for you. So,
Yeah, well said.
I appreciate that what you said, Marty, and I was thinking of what you said, Mitch, that a lot of counselors, don't use assessments, and I'm thinking they're too expensive. They're too expensive. Who could afford
frankly.
it? That's a whole other problem. But
and the biggest problem I have with assessments is they don't teach them how to administer them. They just give them the clients and they say, fill this out.
Yep.
And they don't teach them how to sit down with clients and go, okay, here are your results. This is what it indicates. What do you think about that? They don't teach them the counseling process around assessments. So,
not myself.
Yeah. I mean, and the first assessment class I taught, I realized I couldn't find any content material on how to do that. I still don't think it's out there. I haven't looked for books that teach that or talk about it. Actually, I was working with, there's a chapter that I just did on diagnosis and assessment for a book that Kent Butler and his partner has put together. I forget, Singleford, have put together. And I got to do the diagnosis and assessment chapter, which was interesting for me, and built in directly a structure on how do you respond, how do you present results to clients, because I couldn't find it anywhere. And so I think that those practical applications of stuff that stays academic, like a lot of career theories and a lot of assessment instruments, never get down to the actual practice and use of them. So somehow you both got me excited. So I'll go on to the final question that we have. What's the hardest part of finals week?
Oh, for me, it's like that period between 4:30 and 5 on Friday of finals week. At 5, I'm going to put my out of office message up. And, usually at 4:56, 4:57, here come the emails. And it's like, okay, I deal with them. But yeah, just kind of hoping I'll get out of it and be able to post the out of office and then not think about it for a while, but waiting for that moment, that's the hardest.
So I'm just going to be honest with this question. Right now, it's the guilt. It's not about it's not about what I'm doing, but I work at I work at a private university, right, and finals week is on the individual's minds who I'm providing counseling to, and I forgot that people are like, they have like 15 credits or like 18 credits. And I understand that I'm like working and doing other stuff too. But I'm like sitting there and I'm like, could I like double my class load right now? No. And I'm like sitting there and I'm just like, I'm sitting with like my classes, right? And like, in my friend groups, like, gosh, they're like, don't want to do this assignment, right? Like all the stuff. It's like, I'm not really like, I could do this assignment, or I could watch some TV, or I could play some video games, or I could listen to some music, right? Obviously get my homework done, but the big difference I think has been hearing about some undergrad experiences this semester and going like, you have how many credits? You have 7 classes, right? And I'm just like sitting there and I'm like, yeah, I'm okay here. Like, I'm okay here. Like, I don't have to sit down and have 5 tests next week. And so I think there's some like guilt about that coming up where I'm just like, I've been through that, to be fair. I've been through that in my undergrad, to be fair. And also that's been interesting. I'm not sure if that's really the hardest part, listening to other people. But it's certainly dealing with my own internal feelings about like, oh, wow, I forgot like other people have like 6 classes right now and have like 5 tests next week. That's a lot to study for over one weekend, or multiple weekends.
I was thinking of the similar thing, Mitch. My kids are agonizing over their finals, and yeah, the types of courses that they're involved in and the number, not what I was doing in grad school.
Mm-hmm.
So what? Oh, yeah. I forget now. It goes back to me, right?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, it goes back to me because Elliott already answered. Yeah,
Yep.
This is where my head's at. Mitch, when you're talking about those students that have like 4 or 5 exams in one week and how they have to prepare for them and all of that, I got a little choked up. I kind of miss those days. I mean, the whole finals week thing was such a ritual that included staying up late. It included, I've got 2 exams tomorrow. How am I going to balance that? Let me go get something to eat. There was a whole immersion experience that it's for me, that's the best part of a ritual, when you can't tell up from down. You haven't gotten enough sleep. You get through it. You get through your last one, and it's like the heavens have opened. I miss all that. But for me, the hardest part about finals week is having the strength to grade, because once I give the exam, I'm already out the door, and then having to sit and read the exams and grade them and get that part done. I have my little cave here where I set up stuff to have the exams on multiple screens and the answers, and then figure out how to do that. But the hardest part for me for finals week is grading. I've already gotten my finals start tomorrow. I've gotten my finals written last week and exams ready to go. And now it's like, okay, I give them and then I have to grade them. And I'm sure students don't feel any pity for me in that process. But that's the hardest part for me, because I'm thinking, and then they put in like, let's have a school party where we can all show up in silly sweaters, and I'm not there. I generally tell them I'm Buddhist and don't celebrate the holiday, and that gets me out of a lot of stuff. But I'm so much ready to finish up the semester that I don't want to stop and celebrate the holiday with other folks, but the grading is the thing that looms over my head.
Yep. At least you said tests, Marty. I work with a lot of part-timers, and I'll look over their syllabi and I'll be like, "Oh, so you've got a term paper that's due the last week of the semester, do you?" "Oh, yeah." And I said, "All right, my friend, let me give you some guidance here." And you can guess what I'm going to say after that. So,
Yeah, who wants to read that many term papers?
in a week.
Yeah, I know. It's like, and I tell my students occasionally, I said, term papers are for other faculty to assign you. I don't think they're practical job applications. I don't think you're going to walk into your first master's degree counseling job and they're going to say, okay, we want you to write a term paper for us on this and make sure it's APA 7th edition style. So I'm like, that's good if you want to go on for a doctorate, but frankly, there are enough faculty that are assigning those kinds of things through the course of a master's program that I'm like, no, that's for somebody else to do. I don't want to read 25 papers on rational emotive behavior therapy or MI or mindfulness. I don't want you to have to write them, and I certainly don't want to have to read them and decide which one's better than the other. They all are kind of patter in a lot of ways. Boy, I'm in a bad mood today. I don't know. I don't want to be so harsh.
That
So
just
I have a
means it's
final.
finals
What?
week. It means it's finals week.
It means it's finals week. Yeah, there's a show title right there. Um, the holiday gift. So the final shot question I have is the holiday gift or ornament that you still have that surprises you that you still have it.
Well, this was a gift of there was a show, there was a movie based on a novel by Earl Hamner Jr. called The Homecoming, and it became the basis for a television series back in the 70s called The Waltons. But the movie's called The Homecoming, and it's based on Earl Hamner's novel. And I saw it, my sister and I watched it as a movie of the week with my parents, and because the people in the show they're living in the depression and it was so similar to what my parents lived through, and so I got real attached to that. And then Jen, my partner, bought that for me for one Christmas, and just watched it last night.
So I'm partially going to give an answer that is a little strange because I don't have this right now. And I've been told that it's been lost, but I guess I'll have to tell the story around it. So there's this, and I can't remember if I've mentioned this before, there's this little Santa. We call it, just like little Santa. And it's this Santa that's kind of like a little, for lack of a better word, it's a little creepy looking. It's this tiny little doll, that we've got. And it occasionally ends up in my suitcase. And then it occasionally ends up in my sister's suitcase when she comes to visit. And we keep passing the Santa back and forth over time. And she's lost it. And so I don't have it right now, but I wouldn't be surprised if I had it in the future, because this idea of like, well, now I have to second guess myself. I think my sister's an honest person. Do I know that she's being honest about the Santa? Has she actually lost it, or has she lost it? I don't know.
Mitch,
So
didn't you say you were traveling to Nebraska? Ba-dum-bum-bum.
I'm just if it ends up in my suitcase, I'm gonna be upset because I don't like having it, because it's like we there's the idea of like when I have it or when I don't have it, I'm always checking. I'm doing like check-in behaviors to see like, okay, it's not in my suitcase yet. It's not in my suitcase yet, and I need to like write myself a note when I leave from their house of like, gonna check. Gonna make sure that it's not in my suitcase, and I inevitably forget when I'm hugging the kids, and it ends up in my suitcase every time. So, lost it. Okay, we'll see.
I think listeners will want to hear back on that after the holiday.
Yeah, this question came from the fact that we were putting our tree up yesterday, and I asked Aileen, I said, where are the tandem teddy bears on a tandem bike? We have this ornament that's a bicycle built for two with teddy bears on it. And because we can't have, we always have to hang this on the Christmas tree, primarily because it's turned into a little bit of a joke because we've dropped it so many times that the teddy bears have lost their limbs. So each couple of Christmases it gets dropped, and then one loses an arm, and then the next. And it doesn't occur to us, I think, to glue them back on. I mean, it's just teddy bear lost an arm this year, and so that's the gift that just keeps on giving. And those poor teddy bears are torsos probably close by this point. I have to go and. Pardon?
Teddy Torso.
Yeah, it's Teddy Torso. That might be a better show title. That's a better show title, Teddy Torso. Okay, so boy, that was fun. Thank you guys for joining us and doing a double round tonight. Thanks to Mitch and Elliott for joining us as part of the group. And we'll be back again in 2 weeks for another episode. Look for some of these characters on their podcasts on the podtalk.net. You can find out more about them at circularfiringsquad.net. Make sure and check out the Tech Savvy Professor. Eric and I have kind of taken a break from that because his new position has required him to, we keep canceling because he gets called into meetings and things like that. So we're going to pick it up again, I think, after spring. And then I have a show called Vision Profiles I do on Monday night, live stream at 9 o'clock. That's about the Vision Pro headset. And that's a fun show to do. A lot of research behind it and a lot of information that goes into it. Our theme song is from Menage a Quad, Real Swing Chet. That's it for this episode of Circular Firing Squad. Ready, fire, aim.